International Energy Agency's decision to release 400 million barrels is a significant intervention.
The decision by the International Energy Agency, IEA, to release about 400 million barrels from strategic reserves is a very significant intervention. Indeed, the largest coordinated release in the agency's history. The goal is simple: inject additional supply into the market as quickly as possible to calm panic and signal that governments are prepared to act collectively. However, its effectiveness will likely be temporal rather than structural. The core problem is not just a shortage of oil, but a geopolitical disruption of transport routes, especially the Strait of Hormuz.
However, he says the move is intended to buy time.
It gives policymakers a window to, prevent panic buying, reduce volatility in energy markets, and allow diplomacy or naval security operations to restore safe passage. So, in short, the IEA release is a stabilizing signal to markets, but the real solution lies in reopening and securing the Strait of Hormuz.
What geopolitical risks could emerge if the US-Israel war with Iran continues to threaten one of the world's most critical oil supply routes? CEO of Nalole Energy, Dr. Victoria Nalole, shares her insights.
If the disruption continues, geopolitical risks increase significantly, including sustained oil price spikes, global inflation, and potential regional escalation involving attacks on Gulf energy infrastructure or shipping routes. So over time, the prolonged instability could push major importers to diversify supply and accelerate investments on alternative routes and energy sources, because obviously we are in an energy transition era. But however, oil and gas has been playing a major role in different countries. But the geopolitical risk, if it continues, then that means that we'll see more countries escalating investments in alternative energy and also finding alternative routes to ensure that the geopolitics does not continuously impact the energy sector.
With airlines already facing airspace restrictions and higher fuel cost, how might this conflict reshape airline profitability and ticket prices in the short to medium term? Guy Leach is an aviation expert.
The additional costs are quite hard to quantify at this stage because airlines typically hedge 80 to 85% of their fuel forward purchases for up to a year, between 6 months and a year. So it takes quite a while for these fuel costs to percolate down to direct ticket costs. But bear in mind that a lot of tickets have also been sold 6 months in advance, and those ticket prices cannot change with fuel costs. So what tends to happen is there's a bit of a lag in terms of the prices coming through, and then there's a spike as with a delay once the ticket prices come through. And obviously, that all affects airline profitability, especially because fuel typically costs 30% of an airline operating costs. So if fuel goes up, then airline profitability does suffer.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg, South Africa.
We continue our focus on Iran and a message from Iran's newly appointed Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, appeared to defy a resolution passed by the United Nations Security Council demanding Tehran immediately stop all attacks directed at Arab countries in the region. The resolution, which passed with 13 voters in favor and 2 abstentions from Russia as well as China, only targeted Iran's retaliatory strikes but made no demands on the United States or Israel in relation to continuing military action that is targeting Iran. Khamenei, whose first public statement was read on Iranian state television, said all U.S. military bases in the Middle East should close immediately. that those bases would be attacked and that the Strait of Hormuz should remain closed as a tool to, I quote, pressure the enemy, likely reference to the United States. Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
Pressure on global markets continued as the war approached the 2-week mark, with oil prices now hovering above $90 a barrel, amid continued maritime disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz, despite a binding Security Council resolution calling on Iran to comply fully with its obligations under international law and reaffirming the exercise of navigational rights and freedoms by merchant and commercial vessels, while condemning any action by Iran aimed at closing or obstructing international navigation through the strait. But given the latest statement from Iran's supreme leader, that legally binding resolution is likely to be defied. Listen to Iran's envoy to the United Nations, Ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani.
This resolution is a manifest injustice against my country, the main victim of a clear act of aggression. It distorts the realities on the ground and deliberately ignores the root causes of the current crisis. Iran re-emphasized that its defense operation targeting United States military bases and facilities in the region are in no way against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the regional countries. Also, the Israeli regime has succeeded in dragging the United States into a regional conflict.
With the shipping of oil through the Strait of Hormuz effectively stopped by Iran, the country warned that the oil price could climb to $200 a barrel, even as the US President Donald Trump provided a positive sentiment on how the war was going.
We're going to be in very good shape. You see what's happening. They are pretty much at the end of the line. Doesn't mean we're going to end it immediately, but they've got no Navy, they've got no Air Force, they've got no anti-air traffic, anything. They have no systems of control. We're just riding free range over that country. And now we're going to look very strongly at the Straits. The Straits are in great shape. We've knocked out all of their boats. They have some missiles, but not very many. I think we're in very good shape. The main thing is we have to win this thing, win it quickly, but win it. And there are many people, I'm just watching some of the news. Most people say it's already been won. It's just a question of when. When do we stop?
This as the International Energy Agency released 400 million barrels of oil from global strategic reserves in an effort to stabilize oil markets. Listen to the agency's executive director Fateh Birol.
Dünya enerji piyasaları Orta Doğu'daki gelişmelerden ötürü
Global energy markets are going through an extremely critical period due to developments in the Middle East. In particular, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has caused serious problems in the global oil and natural gas markets. To help resolve these problems, the International Energy Agency, as I announced in a press conference, began releasing 400 million barrels of oil into the markets yesterday. This is an extremely important issue.
Senate Democrats in the U.S. are demanding public hearings on the war in Iran, raising questions about the goal, scope, cost and endgame of U.S. involvement. Senator Richard Blumenthal among them.
The American people deserve to know much more than this administration has told them about the cost of the war, the danger to our sons and daughters in uniform, and the potential for further escalation and widening of this war, a war of choice made by this president, not chosen by the American people, with potentially huge consequences to American lives.
The New York Times was first to report that the war has cost the United States more than $11.3 billion in the first 6 days. That's almost 190 billion rand, citing sources familiar with a briefing by military officials to members of Congress. The figure is said to be a low-end estimate and does not include the build-up and positioning of military assets and personnel in the region ahead of the war. What is clear is that war is costly to civilians, to civilian infrastructure, in terms of escalating humanitarian needs, in addition to the cost of funding the weapons and munitions that bring the devastating impacts and consequences of war to bear. I'm Sherwin Bryce Peace in New York.
Let's just do it.
Your life just got easier.
Get the Channel Africa app and take us wherever you go. Catch the latest news, enjoy your favorite shows, stream the music you love, and stay connected to the continent. All in one spot, right in your pocket. Simple, quick, and always with you. The Channel Africa app. Download it now on iOS and Android. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 4:29 Central African Time. Still coming up on Africa in Business, we'll take a look at Rwanda's efforts in order to secure and procure more secure and reliable energy supply, and also to support its long-term goals. The country planning to invest up to $6 billion in a nuclear power plant. We'll be speaking this afternoon to energy analyst Tsepo Khadima regarding that. Also, other stories coming up, a look at the hotel industry on the African continent. But for now, let's take a look at the latest market indicators with Tabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Sis Thami, and good afternoon. $1 in South Africa will cost you 16 Rand 64. Botswana, it's a 13 Pula 33. Namibia, it's a 16 Namibian dollars 64. And in Zambia, it will cost you 19 kwacha 44. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 447. Ethiopia, 155 birr 882. Uganda, 3,000 shilling 709. And in Tanzania, it will cost you 2,000 shilling 595. The dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,393 naira. In Egypt, it's at 52 Egyptian pound 170. Tunisia, 2 dinar 922. And in Algeria, it's at 130 dinar 961. The Moroccan dirham is trading at 276 to the dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is at 2,158 to the US dollar. Commodities markets, gold is trading at $5,117, platinum $2,099 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $99.35 a barrel. For any business stories that you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, here is Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, Thami. We kick off with football news. The president of the Congolese Football Federation, Jean-Guy Blaise Mayolas, has been sentenced to life imprisonment after being found guilty in a major corruption case that has shaken football administration in the Central African country. Mayolas was convicted of several offences, including money laundering, embezzlement, and document forgery. He did not appear in court during the hearing and was therefore sentenced in absentia. The court also handed life sentences to his wife and son after finding that they had participated in the scheme. Prosecutors said the case centered on the alleged misappropriation of funds allocated to the Federation by FIFA for football development programs. According to evidence presented during the trial, about $1.3 million intended for grassroots football initiatives and administrative development was diverted through fraudulent financial transactions. Investigators said the funds were channeled through falsified financial records and other irregular transactions designed to conceal the diversion of the money. Orbit College young sensational attacker Homule Mokhoto is grateful for his time at parent club Orlando Pirates, the Buccaneers, and believes it has helped him improve his football. Khoto, who is on loan from Pirates and has been one of the bright sparks in what has been a baptism of fire for the Mswenko boys' first foray into the top flight football, The flying left wing has scored once in 40 matches in all competitions for Orbit and says the valuable lessons from this season will benefit him upon his return to the Buccaneers.
With this my team, but like for now I'm on loan from Orlando Pirates.
What can you say about the rise of your football career? How you moved from Orbit to Pirates and some of the learnings that you got at Pirates?
At Pirates I learned a lot, and at Orbit I'm still learning a lot because I'm playing a big league now. At Pirates I was playing DDC, so coming back on loan is gonna help me a lot if I go back there, because I'll be understanding the game more.
Now, cricket news. Following an impressive run at the recently concluded 2026 Men's T20 World Cup, Zimbabwe is set to receive $538,000 from the International Cricket Council, the ICC, as its reward for finishing 7th. The Chevrons were one of the teams to make it to the Super 8 in the tournament and have been ranked 7th overall. In the Super 8, Zimbabwe finished higher than Sri Lanka, who ended in 8th position, and they will receive $475,962. The ICC has allocated a total of $11.25 million to be shared among the 20 participating teams. The fourth place finisher, England, one of the best performers, will earn $974,423 for their efforts, while the West Indies, who finished 5th, and Pakistan, who finished 6th, are set to receive $538,000 and $522,000 respectively. The Gauteng Jaguars in netball are set to unveil Judy Ratete as their new assistant coach ahead of the 2026 Telkom League season. The former Ekurhuleni A coach will serve as deputy to head coach Roseanne Mattheis, succeeding Anna Makalani, who previously held the role. Ratete is expected to earn a salary that is prescribed for Gauteng coaches. Sports coaches in Gauteng generally earn between $640 and $2,000 per month, with experienced coaches 5 years plus, likely at the higher end. General markets and the average salary for a sports coach in Gauteng is reported at around $4,000 per year in some roles, though this varies widely depending on the level of the league, professional and amateur. Ratete says she is delighted to return to the TNL and believes her experience will help guide the Jaguars youth squad back to the final.
It's quite exciting to be back into the system of TNL. And obviously, I like the fact that also the Jaguars team this year is quite a young team, looking at the mere fact that we only have 3 or 4 older players. By older players, players that have been in the structure before, or rather, for a better word, players that have been in the system before. So I'm very, very, very excited.
And let's end with golf news. Nigeria's Kaduna Golf Club is gearing up to host the annual First Bank Kaduna Golf Tournament on the 28th of March, with organizers expecting more than 200 golfers to compete in what is projected to be a significantly upgraded edition of the event. Captain of Kaduna Golf Club, Honorable Nazifi Jibrin, says extensive preparations are underway to ensure a successful one-day tournament sponsored by First Bank. NCBA has committed $460,000 to the 2026 Golf Series to support golf development across East Africa. This investment includes $92,000 for the Junior Golf Foundation, $46,000 for the Kenya Golf Union KGU to support junior and amateur golf championship. This commitment marks another year of support for NCBA for the sport in the region. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, File Ngwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
It is 37 minutes after 4 p.m. Thank you to Figile Lingwati and Tabiso Lihoko. We turn our focus now on Africa's tourism and hospitality sector. It is showing strong growth with hundreds of new hotels as well as resorts planned across the continent. A new report by the W Hospitality Group reveals that 675 hotels and resorts are currently in development on the continent, reflecting growing investor confidence in the region's tourism potential. Our reporter, Lebohang Mabange, has more.
A new report by the W Hospitality Group shows that Africa's hotel development pipeline now includes more than 123,000 rooms across 675 hotels and resorts as tourism demand continues to grow across the continent. According to Roy Bannister, Head of Strategic Partnerships for Africa for the Future Hospitality Summit Africa, the surge in hotel developments reflects rising investor interest in Africa's expanding tourism market.
These 675 hotels and resorts are deals signed by the hotel chains that contributed to the survey, 42 of them in total this year. Nearly all of these deals are management and franchise deals. The likes of Marriott and Hilton, among others, are not investors, they're service providers. But on the other side of the table, on each deal is an investor, and these are investors who understand the long-term benefits of our sector. As you say, tourism is growing faster in Africa than any region. And let's be clear, tourists are not just on vacation. The term includes business travelers, government officials and diplomats, aid workers, conference delegates, religious travelers and family visits. Our industry is big and it's growing, especially with the development of new resorts in countries such as Egypt and Tanzania, things Zanzibar, these are countries with increased airlift and with above average economic growth.
Bannister says government support and infrastructure development are among the key factors attracting investment into tourism and hospitality projects.
I think there are three main factors at play there. Number one, and taking Egypt as one example, but you could apply this equally to countries such as Morocco, South Africa and Kenya. You have central and regional governments that get tourism. They understand the benefits that growth in tourism brings, especially jobs for growing populations, and they understand that their role is to encourage the private sector and to provide the infrastructure such as roads, trains, airports, etc. that are needed by developers and tourists alike. Along with that, they devote funds for marketing the country as a destination and also to promotion of investment. Second, these countries have scale. They have numerous cities and resort locations where development can take place and are accessible through the infrastructure I just mentioned, of course.
The report also highlights strong construction momentum in East Africa, particularly in countries such as Kenya, Ethiopia and Tanzania. Bannister says improved project management and financing conditions may be contributing to the progress seen in the region.
Sometimes one of the reasons new developments don't proceed as planned is that the project lacks professionalism in the ownership and the design team and the building contractors. My observation is that there is a much higher quality of all three in East Africa than in some other countries. Don't get me wrong, I'm making a sweeping generalization, of course. But there are projects in other regions of Sub-Saharan and North Africa which are as good, if not better, than those in East Africa. And then, of course, there's finance. Perhaps the financial sector in those countries has more depth, with more acceptable interest rates and loan tenors than others, maybe.
Industry leaders are expected to explore these trends further at the upcoming Future Hospitality Summit Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Those countries which have the best tourism growth are those with governments that support the sector. It's as simple or of course, as complicated as that. So we're hoping to unpack more of W Hospitality's Hotel Chain Development Pipelines report for Africa when Trevor Ward, the author of this report, will do a deep dive into this at Africa's leading hospitality investment event, Future Hospitality Summit Africa. This year's summit takes place in Kenya on 31st of March and 1st of April in Nairobi.
Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebohang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is now 4:42 Central African time. Rwanda plans to invest up to $6 billion in a nuclear power plant to secure a reliable electricity supply and support its long-term economic growth. The country aims to deploy small modular reactors, SMRs, to expand electricity generation capacity and drive industrial development. The East African nation hopes to have its first nuclear power plant operational around the year 2030 as it works towards achieving high income status by 2050. Meanwhile, from the 2nd to the 9th of March 2026, a team from the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA visited Rwanda to review the country's infrastructure development as well as its preparedness for the Rwanda nuclear power program. For more on this, we joined on the line by energy analyst Tsepo Kharima. Good to be talking to you once again, Tsepo. So looking at Rwanda, they're planning to invest up to $6 billion in the nuclear power plant. How significant is this investment for the landlocked country?
Dr. Rotheswell, greetings to you as well as to the listeners on Channel Africa. This is a significant move, I think, for Rwanda, which is a small landlocked country that does have abundant renewable in the form of hydro, but their choice of technology, I think, it is indicative of the aspirations of the countries in terms of its developmental goals. That is meaning that they want to make a giant leap to those industries which rely largely, which are energy intensive industries and that require energy on demand. So therefore, in cases, I think you and I previously spoke about when Zambia and Zimbabwe, when the water levels were running low on the Kariba Dam, and as a result, we saw a reduced output of electricity. That had a knock-on effect on critical industries that are energy intensive. So for Rwanda to go this route, I think it demonstrates that there's been a great deal of thought of ensuring that the growth trajectory economically and the industrialization trajectory that they want to adopt requires energy on demand constant, but also at the lower cost. I think much has been said that nuclear energy is more expensive, but in the reality is that, in fact, it is more reliable, cleaner, and also the least cost. And examples can be taken from France. France being within the European Union countries, more than 70% of electricity from France comes from nuclear. And as a result, it is more competitive to establish energy intensive industries in France than in Germany, which had adopted by and large the so-called renewables. And if you look at South Africa, Eskom, from its Quebec nuclear power plant, it is the lowest cost electricity producer in the entire fleet of Eskom, and beating even the so-called renewables by a factor of 10 times. So it's 1/10 of what ordinarily the other technologies actually cost to produce electricity. So it demonstrates that I think for Rwanda it has been a well thought out route to go, and then the choice of the technology being
and I wonder, I think before we even go that direction, we've been talking pretty much about the financing of this. It is going to be costing billions of dollars. It's a major undertaking for Rwanda. How is it likely to finance this project?
Well, effectively, they would be able to attract investment in the energy intensive industries, and those energy intensive industries are going to enter into power purchase agreements. So effectively, from the revenues that would be generated from the supply of electricity to the energy intensive industries, then they would be able to finance. So from the involvement largely of the Russians, it tells me that probably maybe they are going to adopt a vendor financing model, whereby the vendors of the technology, because the SMR also being the small modular reactor technology being new and being deployed on scale globally, it means that the technology vendors are very keen to demonstrate confidence in their technology that they will be willing to provide vendor financing. So I think most of the companies that actually have designed and engineered and manufactured this small modular reactor technologies are very desperate to find client countries which will adopt these technologies. And as a result, by and large, they will be able to provide the vendor financing to ensure that they can be able to demonstrate that indeed this is the preferred technology that will by and large replace the old, larger critical stage nuclear power stations, which will be like a 982 megawatts, as opposed to having a 35 megawatt nuclear reactor, for example.
I'd like us to look into the technicalities of this. What is the difference between the two, the small modular reactors that Rwanda is considering versus the traditional larger nuclear plants that you were talking about? And what are the advantages then that SMRs have in comparison to the larger nuclear plants?
Well, the advantage of the SMRs is that you can be able to then deploy them on microgrids. You can be able to deploy them near the point of usage, therefore avoiding having to build transmission lines that spans, hundreds or even thousands of kilometers, as we would say have in South Africa, particularly for countries that have got a land mass such as that of South Africa. But also on the other hand, the SMRs, you are able to use alternative cooling systems as opposed to, that almost all the nuclear power stations have to be near a large body of water, and hence most of them are located by the sea, except that the one at Pelindaba in South Africa, which has got its water source for cooling, is the Hartbeespoort Dam. And most people might not be aware that dam actually had to be expanded to the size that it is today in order to have that body of water for cooling. Whereas with the SMRs, you are able to use gas, for example, for cooling, and therefore you can be able to deploy them in landlocked countries whereby even if there's water scarcity, you are still able to deploy and run those SMRs. And secondly, of course, the time ingredient was the larger power stations, nuclear power stations, takes years. You can take anything from 7 to 12 years from the time that you break ground to the time that of actually commissioning. And hence the risk of cost overruns is always a factor in these projects with long lead times, whereas the small modular reactors are going to be the preferred technologies to be adopted, I think, globally, for those reasons. And secondly, that you are able to scale up because then they are in modular. So therefore you can keep on adding on as and when the electricity demand increases. Yes.
We're going to have to wrap up, and I really have to ask you this final last question. If you could just maybe answer it in 3 seconds, if you could. How much power is actually going to be generated, the additional electricity capacity could this nuclear bring? And then also just to round off with the importance of the role of the International Atomic Energy Agency in guiding countries like Rwanda as they enter the nuclear energy. As I mentioned in my introduction earlier this month, they actually went to Rwanda to review the country's infrastructure development and their preparedness for nuclear.
Nuclear energy is the most regulated. Therefore, it is reasonable that the Atomic Energy Agency would go there and assist Rwanda. And that is a good thing. I think it demonstrates prudence in terms of what the approach that Rwanda has adopted. And 6 billion price tag, that tells me that probably they will be able to have installed capacity of about 3,000 megawatts. That is massive for a country the size of Rwanda. So it tells you that perhaps maybe we'll see larger scale deployment of data centers and cryptocurrency mining, because those are energy intensive industries.
Tshepo Kgalema, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking us through those plans that Rwanda is having as far as the development of the nuclear energy supply. Thank you for your time.
Asante sana.
That's Tshepo Kgalema, energy analyst.
The sound of Africa is evolving. Experience our new mobile app. Free to download, free to connect. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Sitting with a lady who speaks so many languages. We're literally talking about how many languages she speaks right now. You speak English, you speak French, you speak Swahili, you speak
Lingala.
Lingala.
And I speak another language, my mother's.
What is your mother's language?
I really know. It's called Lunda.
Lunda. And where is that from? Where's your mom from?
From the DRC.
From the DRC,
Yeah.
Lunda. Absolutely amazing. I must say, when I grew up, I want to be like you.
How many languages do you speak?
Well, not as many. I speak a lot of South African languages, but what's
Okay.
impressive about you is that these languages are from different parts of the African continent.
No. It's from... No, from one country.
Are they all from one
Different-
country?
Yeah.
Including Swahili?
Yes.
Yeah? Oh, okay. I must brush up on that. South African languages, yes, I do. Yeah, but I think it's so impressive to be able to communicate in different languages. The fact that you
That's
do
right.
English and you do French and you do Swahili. That is
And Swahili
in
is
itself...
spoken in many
Exactly.
countries.
So it gives you the
yes.
ability to be able to travel and to interact a whole lot more than somebody
Definitely.
who speaks Xhosa, Zulu, Tswana, Sotho, which is all
Definitely.
concentrated around Southern
Yes,
Africa. But
I
you can
see what
actually,
you
do you see
mean,
what I
yeah.
mean? You are actually able to travel throughout the continent and be able to, converse conversationally.
Yes.
So what do you have in store for us on Vue d'Afrique?
Bonjour à tous les auditeurs, merci de rester connectés sur Vue d'Afrique. Tout à l'heure, il sera question du Niger qui dénonce l'attitude paternaliste et condescendante de l'Union européenne, qui appelle à la libération immédiate de Mohamed Bazoum, mais aussi nous parlerons du Sénégal. Plusieurs associations et collectifs saluent le vote à l'Assemblée nationale durcissant les peines contre l'homosexualité. C'est tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connectés. Merci Thami.
Merci beaucoup. She is Joelle, coming up at the top of the hour with Vue d'Afrique.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
So we close off with this afternoon, taking a look at the Altron FinTech Household Resilience Index. The results show that South African households continue to be financially resilient amid the current economic pressures. The index saw a 5% increase in the third quarter of 2025. And while this is positive news, Altron says households remain largely under financial pressure. Notando Makutulela has more.
Altron FinTech Household Resilience Index, AFHRI, shows a healthy year-on-year improvement of 2.1% in line with the country's GDP growth rate. Altron says this is due to lower interest rates that are starting to create space for recovery, and it expects this positive trajectory to strengthen as market conditions stabilize. Altron FinTech Household Resilience Index author Dr. Rulof Botha.
The impact of higher interest rates on households' financial resilience is very strong all over the world, but especially in an economy like ours. So I like to believe that our prime overdraft rate currently at 10.25% is way too high. If you look at the decline in the 10-year government bond yield, which usually tracks the prime rate very closely, that is now much, much lower than the prime rate. And I think it's time for the Monetary Policy Committee to play some catch-up. Going down, of course, they can't bend the bond yield, but they can lower the repo rate. They can do it tomorrow if they want to. So with a bit of luck, we'll have further rate cuts and we'll have further improvements not only to the Altron index, but also to the GDP.
The index also indicates that annuity receipts and long-term insurance surrenders saw the highest increases on a year-on-year basis. It says this is due to the two-part system withdrawals. Dr. Botha again.
If you look at the annuities received and long-term insurance surrenders, they were amongst the highest increases year on year. And that is obviously as a result of the two-pot system. Now, the two-pot system, if people dip into that, they have more money to spend. So that will boost the Altron FinTech Index. It looks at the current scenario, the most recent scenario. It doesn't look into 5 or 10 years from now, when this person that took current savings to spend now has to face a lower pension. So if you do the two-pot system, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you realize that you have to replenish that at some point in time, either by working harder or by working smarter, which are always a good idea.
Looking ahead, Altron says the combination of traditional festive season spending, 13th check payments, and possible rate cut later this year are expected to support further gains. However, it says sustained improvement will depend heavily on job creation. Nothando Makotolela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:58 Central African time. Just a quick recap of some of the top stories that we brought to you today. Some really interesting news coming out of our business roundup with Victor Khamosana. The impact that natural gas exports have had on the GDP in Mozambique. Also Zimbabwe updating and improving on its satellite project. And also the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria saying that reforms in Nigeria's foreign exchange market have significantly improved liquidity. Obviously, we had a whole lot more in store for you, but that's where I'm going to leave it for this Friday. Thank you for having been with us for the entire week. Looking forward to going through the business stories for the next week as we meet again on Monday. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire Africa in Business team, have yourself a splendid evening further as we hand the reins over now to Vous d'Afrique and the French desk. Restez connectés.
Africa is moving faster, smarter, further.